As a lot of people know, we're supposed to be getting the remake of Zelda Ocarina of Time sometime later in 2026 for the Switch 2. It's something that people have been waiting to see for a very, very long time. Never thought Nintendo would actually bring themselves to actually doing it. But, here we are in 2026, and I don't know. I mean, this is something that I thought would happen probably in 2028, considering the fact that that year would mark the 30-year anniversary of Ocarina of Time. But, this is something that was completely unexpected, and it was something that should have happened a long, long time ago. Um, the release date for the remake of Ocarina of Time has yet to be revealed. The price has yet to be revealed, but over the years, people have gone on record and said that Ocarina of Time was one of the greatest, if not the greatest, Zelda game of all time. But that really depends on like who you ask and how you're basically looking at, I guess, Zelda games over the past like 4 decades or whatever. Um, you look at like the best Zelda games, like I'm talking about past, present, and future. Um, well, I'd say like past and present, anyways. You look at games like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. Those two games outsold Ocarina of Time. Breath of the Wild did like 34 plus mil, and Tears of the Kingdom did over 20 mil. Um, Ocarina of Time, I believe, when it came out back on the N64, did like over 7 mil. And in terms of lifetime sales, I'm talking about different versions of Ocarina of Time. It's been over 14 mil in terms of sales. And a lot of people, debate on what Zelda game is like the best of all time. And like I'll say this, the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, in my opinion, it solidified the Zelda IP as legendary because of what you saw in it. Because like what you saw in Ocarina of Time back in 1998 was unlike anything you saw in a video game, and it was the first ever 3D Zelda game. That's why it was such a big deal. The mechanics were advanced. People love like the cinematic camera work. Uh, it was a much better game than Super Mario 64, which I don't know. A lot of people look back in hindsight and feel it's overrated. Um, I think Super Mario 64 was okay, but at the same time, a lot of people will go the extra mile and say that it's aged horribly. But graphically, the N64 looks inferior to almost anything you would see nowadays for the most part. Um, but yeah, it's just like this game was really, really important, mainly because of the storytelling aspect of the narrative. And I don't know, like you have like multiple timelines, you have the child timeline, the adult timeline, and I think like after like Ocarina of Time, they introduced like Nintendo introduced the downfall timeline, and it would lead to games like Twilight Princess, The Wind Waker, and Link to the Past. So it's a very, very important game within the entire series, and it's one of those games that I feel like was ahead of its time, because no one really thought that. Well, honestly, like a lot of people didn't really think, Nintendo was ever going to come up with anything that was going to surpass Ocarina of Time back in the day. And for a while, that had been the case up until like Breath of the Wild from 2017. Twilight Princess from 2006 was actually pretty good. A lot of people liked. The presentation, how it was dark and grounded and serious and all that. But in hindsight, people look back at Twilight Princess 20 years later and they think that that entry was actually pretty overrated. No one will ever go on record and tell you that, Ocarina of Time is more overrated than Twilight Princess, but at the same time, I feel like people have different preferences. Some people are more fans of 2D installments of the series from back in the day, like Link to the Past, Link's Awakening, and there are people who know for a fact that in terms of just about everything, gameplay mechanics, presentation, realism, that Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild are more superior games than Ocarina of Time. But I honestly feel like Ocarina of Time is one of those games that has aged magnificently um, within the past like 30 years. And the fact that it's getting a 3D remake in this day and age is amazing because we all know Nintendo's not too big on remakes for the most part, even though they've done some like recently. I remember one of the last like really big games that they remade was Super Mario RPG, which I think the remake came out back in 2023, and that was a game from 1996. But but yeah, Ocarina of Time, in my opinion, is probably one of the greatest entries in the Zelda series. And I know it's something that's been subject to debate over the past like couple of decades, but again, if there was any game that Nintendo made from the 90s that deserved a remake, it was mainly like this game. I think they remade Link's Awakening, a few years back as well. So if you're gonna remake that, you might as well remake Ocarina of Time. And who knows? I mean, Nintendo might do a remake for Majora's Mask sometime later down the line.